All right, hello and welcome back, everyone. We're jumping into our God Follower Bible Study series with Blue Flower Bible. I'm Matt Webb. As I was preparing for this series, I wanted to focus primarily on the teachings of Jesus and how we're called to live, stuff like that. But in preparing for it, I realized that there were certain foundational issues and ideas that we needed to address first before we can even approach talking about how we ought to live. So today I wanted to start with reading Isaiah 58 because that kind of exemplifies the disconnect that Old Testament Israel struggled with, but it also really parallels the disconnect that we see among modern Christians and in our own modern church culture. So Isaiah 58. Shout it aloud, do not hold back. Raise your voice like a trumpet, declare to my people their rebellion, and to the descendants of Jacob their sins. For day after day they seek me out, they seem eager to know my ways, as if they were a nation that does what is right, and has not forsaken the commands of its God. They ask me for just decisions and seem eager for God to come near to them. Why have we fasted, they say, and you have not seen it? Why have we humbled ourselves and you have not noticed? Yet on the day of your fasting, you do as you please and exploit all your workers. Your fast ends in quarreling and strife and in striking each other with wicked fists. You cannot fast as you do today and expect your voice to be heard on high. Is this the kind of fast I have chosen? Only a day for people to humble themselves? Is it only for bowing one's head like a reed and for lying in sackcloth and ashes? Is that what you call a fast, a day acceptable to the Lord? Is not this the kind of fasting I have chosen? To loose the chains of injustice, to untie the cords of the yoke, to set the oppressed free and break every yoke? Is it not to share your food with the hungry and to provide the poor wanderer with shelter? When you see the naked, to clothe them and not to turn away from your own flesh and blood? Then your light will break forth like the dawn, and your healing will quickly appear. Then your righteousness will go before you, and the glory of the Lord will be your rear guard. Then you will call, and the Lord will answer. You will cry for help, and he will say, Here am I. If you do away with the yoke of oppression and with the pointing finger and malicious talk, and if you spend yourselves on behalf of the hungry and satisfy the needs of the oppressed, then your light will rise in the darkness, and your night will become like the noonday. The Lord will guide you always. He will satisfy your needs in a sun-scorched land, and you will strengthen your frame. You will be like a well-watered garden, like a spring whose waters never fail. Your people will rebuild the ancient ruins and will raise up the age-old foundations. You will be called repairer of broken walls, restorer of streets with dwellings. If you keep your feet from breaking the Sabbath and from doing as you please on my holy day, if you call the Sabbath a delight and the Lord's holy day honorable, and if you honor it by not going your own way and not doing as you please or speaking idle words, then you will find your joy in the Lord, and I will cause you to ride in triumph on the heights of the land and to feast on the inheritance of your father Jacob, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken. And I had intended to record this video yesterday, but things just kept getting in the way, which prevented me from recording, and I was going to record it this morning, and things just got in the way. But then in the late morning, early afternoon, I ended up having a phone call with a couple of friends, and we were talking about some things about the pursuit of excellence and, where is the line of how much effort is acceptable to the Lord and what's, just kind of phoning it in and going through the motions. And it was interesting because I feel like our metric for measuring excellence is off track. It's different from what God uses as a metric, because the world often pursues excellence through, prodigious skill, financial success, status, power, influence, all of those kinds of things. But when you look at Scripture and read through, especially the Old Testament, God's standard for what he expects from us, his standard of excellence, is very different. It's very much rooted in that idea of loving the Lord with all your heart, all your mind, all your soul, and all your strength, and loving your neighbor as yourself. And this disconnect that we see in Isaiah 58, this is how the book of Isaiah starts off in chapter 1, is a criticism of the Israelites' worship of God and their offerings and their sacrifices. Because in life, we can be very good at doing the performative things, going to church and going to Bible study and reading daily devotionals and keeping a prayer journal and doing all of these superficial performative things that make us look spiritual, that make us look religious, that make us look good, and then turn around and fail miserably at the call to love our neighbor as ourselves. All right, and so when we put in all this effort to offer these worldly, vain, superficial versions of excellence, whether it's, polished music or refined sermons or whatever, a beautiful church building, we can actually find ourselves in a position where God actually despises our offering. And this is where the book of Isaiah begins. In chapter 1, it begins with God criticizing Israel's offerings and sacrifices. I'll start in verse 12 of Isaiah chapter 1. When you come to appear before me, who has asked this of you, this trampling of my courts? Stop bringing meaningless offerings. Your incense is detestable to me. New moons, Sabbaths, and convocations. I cannot bear your worthless assemblies. Your new moon feasts and your appointed festivals I hate with all my being. They have become a burden to me. I am weary of bearing them. When you spread out your hands in prayer, I hide my eyes from you. Even when you offer many prayers, I am not listening. Your hands are full of blood. Wash and make yourselves clean. Take your evil deeds out of my sight. Stop doing wrong. Learn to do right. Seek justice. Defend the oppressed. Take up the cause of the fatherless. Plead the case of the widow. And as Christians, that's the last place we want to be in, where we think that we're doing well in serving God and worshiping God and doing what we think is right, when in reality, God actually hates everything that we're doing. And so it begs the question, what kind of sacrifices are pleasing to God? What is it that he actually desires from us? And when you read through Scripture, especially the Old Testament, you see these recurring motifs over and over of what God says he desires and is pleasing to him. Psalm 51:17, the sacrifices of God are a broken spirit. A broken and a contrite heart, O God, you will not despise. Or Proverbs 21:3, to do righteousness and justice is desired by the Lord more than sacrifice. When Jesus criticizes the Pharisees, and he says, go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. He's actually quoting Hosea 6:6, which says, for I delight in loyalty rather than sacrifice, and in the knowledge of God rather than burnt offerings. And that word that's translated as loyalty or mercy or compassion or sometimes faithfulness is the word hesed in the Old Testament in the Hebrew. And the word gets at the idea of love and kindness, but it gets at the idea of loyalty and faithfulness, especially according to a covenant, faithfulness to a covenant. which kind of reminds me of Romans 3 when Paul talks about how our unfaithfulness doesn't nullify God's faithfulness. And so over and over throughout Scripture, we see this call to love our neighbor as ourselves. Mark 12:33, and to love him with all the heart and with all the understanding and with all the strength, and to love one's neighbor as himself is much more than all burnt offerings and sacrifices. This is what God really desires of us, because it's very easy for us to do all of these performative things. You know, we go to church, we go to Bible study, we read daily devotionals, we keep a prayer journal, we do all of these performative things that make us look spiritual, that make us look religious, that make us look good, and then turn around and fail miserably at loving our neighbor as ourselves. We can be completely without mercy, without compassion, without faithfulness. The word hesed is used 247 times in the Old Testament, and many times it's translated as steadfast love. The classic example is Psalm 136, which says, "Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good, for his steadfast love endures forever. His steadfast love is everlasting." And that phrase, that idea, that word, that concept is used over and over and over throughout Psalm 136. But in Micah chapter 6, verse 8, well, actually, I'll go ahead and read verses 6 through 8. Micah, not Hosea. So it asks kind of the rhetorical question, with what shall I come before the Lord and bow myself before God on high? Shall I come before him with burnt offerings, with calves a year old? Will the Lord be pleased with thousands of rams, with 10,000 rivers of oil? Shall I give my firstborn for my transgression, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? He has told you, O man, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you, but to do justice, and to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God. To love kindness, that's our word, hesed. To love loving kindness, to love steadfast love, to love loyalty, to love mercy, to love compassion, to do what is just, to love compassion, to walk humbly with our God. And so I felt like this was an important place to start, because we need to make right the attitude of our hearts. If we have any desire to please God, or for our work to be accepting and pleasing to him, then we need to align our hearts with what he actually desires from us. Because it's very easy for us to pursue these worldly forms of excellence and skill and prodigious talent and all of these other vain, superficial things. But it doesn't really do us any good if God despises the attitude of our hearts, if we're neglecting what he's actually called us to do and to be. I just want to close real quick with Ecclesiastes 4:4. Then I saw that all toil and all skill in work come from a man's envy of his neighbor. This also is vanity and a striving after the wind. So as we kind of prepare our hearts and minds to jump into this series. I hope that we'll all reflect on some of these scripture verses, especially Isaiah 58, so that we aren't pursuing worthless things. We aren't bringing meaningless offerings to God, but that we're actually pursuing the love that He's actually called us to. I'll just read a little bit of Isaiah 58 again, starting in verse 6. Is not this the kind of fast I have chosen, to loose the chains of injustice, and untie the cords of the yoke, and to set the oppressed free, and break every yoke? Is it not to share your food with the hungry, and to provide the poor wanderer with shelter? When you see the naked, to clothe them, and not to turn away from your own flesh and blood. Then your light will break forth like the dawn, and your healing will quickly appear. Then your righteousness will go before you, and the glory of the Lord will be your rear guard. Then you will call, and the Lord will answer. You will cry for help, and He will say, Here am I. I hope you have a wonderful day. Tomorrow we'll talk about the meaning of life.